Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Aleph, and Amir Hashem, we will be learning today Daf Kuf Lamed Ches Amud Aleph. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Tefillah, which we began learning yesterday with Siman Kuf Tes. We pick up today on Kuf Lamed Zayin Amud Beis, Siman Kuf Tes, in the middle of Sif Aleph. So we began learning yesterday a very, very interesting halacha. Let's just give a brief recap of the halacha we learned yesterday. Somebody comes to shul. I'm going to use the example right now of mincha because that's the simplest example to use. Somebody walks into shul to daven mincha, and unfortunately he discovers that he came late. So he comes to shul, and the tzibbur is already davening Shemoneh Esrei. The instant reaction that a person has is to right away grab a sitter and start davening Shemoneh Esrei and get tefillah b'tzibbur, accomplish tefillah b'tzibbur for mincha. Says the mechaber, not so fast. First, you have to take a look and you have to see where is the tzibbur holding. Did the tzibbur just start the shtil Shemoneh Esrei? In that case, you have plenty of time to start your own shtil Shemoneh Esrei, and presumably you'll finish before the chazan starts chazaras hashatz. And when the chazan starts chazaras hashatz, you'll listen to chazaras hashatz. When he gets up to Kedushah, you'll answer to Kedushah. When he gets up to Moedim, you'll bow down by Moedim, and you'll recite Moedim D'Rabbanan, and everything will be fine. But what if you came in later than you think? Maybe the tzibbur has already been davening the shtil Shemoneh Esrei for 5-6 minutes, and maybe the chazan is about to start chazaras hashatz. In that case, if you start the shtil Shemoneh Esrei now, what's going to happen? You're going to start the shtil Shemoneh Esrei, and maybe you'll be up to Rifainu when the chazan hits Kedushah. Now, if you're in the middle of the shtil Shemoneh Esrei, you're not going to be able to answer to Kedushah. So you're putting yourself into a position where you're going to be in the shul, you're going to be davening, you're going to be, so to speak, part of this tzibbur, and yet the rest of the tzibbur is going to be answering to Kedushah, and you will not be answering to Kedushah because you are in the middle of the shtil Shemoneh Esrei. So the mechaber came along, and based on two gemaras in Masechtas Brachos, Chaf Aleph Amud Beis, the mechaber told us that if you come in, like the mechaber says, hanichnas lebeis hakneses, if you came into the shul, umatza tzibbur mispalalin, and you encountered the tzibbur already davening Shemoneh Esrei, you cannot just go ahead and start your own shtil Shemoneh Esrei. Instead, what you have to do is, you have to look around, you have to see where people are holding, and you have to be mishayer. You have to evaluate the situation. Do I have enough time to start the shtil Shemoneh Esrei and finish before the chazan reaches Kedushah? If you have enough time to finish, or like the Mishnah Berurah said, at least to get to a lekai nitzar before the chazan reaches Kedushah, then you could start your shtil Shemoneh Esrei, because then when the shliach tzibbur hits Kedushah, you'll be able to answer Kedushah together with the rest of the tzibbur. But if you're not going to have enough time to finish your shtil Shemoneh Esrei before the chazan hits Kedushah, then you can't start davening. Instead, you have to wait for Kedushah, and then you'll recite Kedushah, and then we'll have to take it from there. It's not so simple. Now maybe you're tempted to start the shtil Shemoneh Esrei right after Kedushah. Not so quick, because the Ramah says if you want to start Shemoneh Esrei now, you have to make sure you're going to be finished before the chazan hits Shemoneh Tefillah, because you have to answer Amen to Shemoneh Tefillah. Also, you can't start your shtil Shemoneh Esrei before Hakel HaKadosh, because you have to answer Amen to Hakel HaKadosh. Also, we don't want you to start the shtil Shemoneh Esrei if you're not going to finish before Moedim. So it gets very, very complex. Of course, the best thing to do is come on time and don't have any of these problems. But if you do come late, according to the Mishnah Berurah's understanding of the mechaber and understanding of the Gemara in Brachos, when you come significantly late, If you come 30 seconds late, maybe you don't have a problem. If you come a minute late and you daven a fair Shemoneh Esrei, so you don't have a problem. But if you come 2-3 minutes late into the Shtil Shemoneh Esrei, and it takes you a decent time to say Shemoneh Esrei, you're running into trouble. This is the halacha that we learned about yesterday. Now, I mentioned yesterday the chiddush of Rav Moshe Zechet Tzadik v'Kedushah Levracha, who held that this halacha is being taken out of context. Rav Moshe held that when the Gemara in Brachos and when the Mechaber says Hanichnas lebeis hakneses umotza tzibbur mispalelin, it doesn't mean that you came into shul and there still were 10 people davening the Shtil Shemoneh Esrei. You see, if there are 10 people still davening the Shtil Shemoneh Esrei, even if they're almost finished the Shtil Shemoneh Esrei, but if there are 10 people still davening the Shtil Shemoneh Esrei, and now you start davening the Shtil Shemoneh Esrei with them, you're going to get tefillah b'tzibbur. The Rosh Yeshiva Zatzal, Rav Moshe Zechet Tzadik v'Kedushah Levracha, held that as long as you're going to get tefillah b'tzibbur, you don't have to worry about Kedushah, you don't have to worry about Kel HaKadosh, you don't have to worry about Shemoneh Tefillah, you don't have to worry about Moedim. He held that tefillah b'tzibbur is doicha everything. The Gemara in Brachos, the Mechaber, Hanichtas lebeis hakneses is about the tzibbur mispalelin. The Yeshiva said, no. Take a look at what it says. It says, Hanichtas lebeis hakneses umotza tzibbur mispalelin. Literally, what that means is, you came into shul, and you found a public assembly, a tzibbur, a group. You found a group that's davening. How big is the group? The Gemara doesn't say. Rav Moshe was bedayik in the Gemara and the Mechaber. It doesn't say Nichnas lebeis hakneses umotza asara shemes palelin. It doesn't say you came in and you found 10 people still davening. No, it says umotza tzibbur mispalelin. Says Rav Moshe, the Gemara in Brachos and the Mechaber over here are talking about where you come late to shul and there aren't 10 people davening anymore. Maybe there's only 3 people still davening the Shtil Shemoneh Esrei. So now, if you start the Shtil Shemoneh Esrei now, you're not getting tefillah b'tzibbur anyway. That's why the Gemara in Brachos and the Mechaber over here says you can't do it. If you're not going to get tefillah b'tzibbur, so then you can't miss out on Kedushah, Kel HaKadosh, Shemoneh Tefillah, Moedim. But if you're going to get tefillah b'tzibbur, if there still are 10 people davening, so you'll get tefillah b'tzibbur, then, says Rav Moshe, then you're allowed to start davening, and you could miss Kedushah, you could miss a Kel HaKadosh, you could miss Shemoneh Tefillah, you could miss Moedim. Why? Because you're gaining tefillah b'tzibbur. So according to Rav Moshe, a lot of the shilos go away. Life becomes a lot simpler. Let's put it into a practical scenario. You come into Mincha and you're late. Just look around. Are there still 10 people davening? So go ahead, start Shemoneh Esrei. Are you going to miss Kedushah? It doesn't matter. You're running behind the tzibbur by Shachris. They started the Shtil Shemoneh Esrei while you were in the middle of Birchas Kriya Shema. And now you're up to Shemoneh Esrei. And they're almost ready to start Chazaras HaShatz. According to the Mishnah Berurah, you have a problem. According to the Mishnah Berurah, what are you going to do? If you're going to start the Shtil Shemoneh Esrei now, you're going to miss Kedushah. So what do? Says the Mishnah Berurah, you have to wait by Shira Chadasha. Right? Wait by Shira Chadasha, and you'll answer Kaddish Kaddish Baruch K'vayid Hashem Kaimai. You'll answer Amen to a Kel HaKadosh. But then what do? If you start Shemoneh Esrei right after a Kel HaKadosh, are you going to be finished before Moedim? If you're not, are you going to be finished before Shemoneh Tefillah? If you're not going to be finished before Shemoneh Tefillah, you're not supposed to start. So what do? You're going to stay by Shira Chadasha and just wait. You can't do that. It'll be a hefsek in Birchas Kriya Shema. So what do? You end up in a very complex situation. You have to start weighing which one is bigger. When should I start? When should I start? According to the Yeshiva Zatzal, according to Rav Moshe, as long as you have a tzibbur that's still davening, you don't have any of these shilos. Because as long as there's a tzibbur that's still davening, you could start the Shtil Shemoneh Esrei, and you could miss whatever you're going to miss, as long as you're going to get tefillah b'tzibbur. Because tefillah b'tzibbur is bigger than anything else. So that's a basic recap of what we saw yesterday. Now, I want to bring your attention to the first biur halacha in this Siman, Kuf Lamed Zayin Amud Beis Bir Halacha Dibur HaMaschil Hanichnas LeBeis HaKnesses U'Motzu Tzibur. The Chavetz Chaim brings down a very interesting shaila. Says the Chavetz Chaim, Nistapakti, I am in doubt. Im miderach tivai laharich batfila. If somebody by nature davens a very long Shemoneh Esrei, he's very careful to have kavana in his Shemoneh Esrei, so his nature is that he davens a very long Shemoneh Esrei. Ve'ena yochel asayim ad Kedushah. This person has a problem on a daily basis. On a daily basis, he comes to shul, and the tzibbur literally davens too fast for him. So on a daily basis, when he davens his Shemoneh Esrei, he never finishes his Shemoneh Esrei before the chazan reaches Kedushah. Is that a problem? Chayra, according to the halacha that we just learned here, according to the Mishnah Berurah's take on the halacha, right? You're mechuyev to be finished your Shemoneh Esrei before the chazan hits Kedushah. Otherwise, you're not allowed to start. But this fellow has this problem on a constant basis. He's not coming late to shul. He's starting the Shemoneh Esrei together with everybody else. But he davens slower than everybody else. So if he davens at his normal pace, he's not going to be finished before Kedushah. Is that a problem? Says the Chavetz Chaim, Nistapakti. I'm not sure. In miderach tivai laharich batfila, if this person by nature davens slow, and therefore ve'eni yochel asayim at Kedushah, he's not able to finish his Shemoneh Esrei before Kedushah, im mutar lahaskil. I'm in doubt whether or not he's allowed to start his Shemoneh Esrei. Because what's the problem? This halacha. By starting his Shemoneh Esrei, he's guaranteeing that he's not going to be finished before Kedushah. How can he do that? Now the Chavetz Chaim points out, you might be tempted to bring a raya from the halacha that we learned here and say, no, he's not allowed to start. Right? We see over here, you come late, you don't start your Shemoneh Esrei if you're going to miss Kedushah. So l'chayra, even if you don't come late, you can't start your Shemoneh Esrei, even if you're starting it on time with everybody else, you can't start if you're not going to be ready for Kedushah. Says the Chavetz Chaim, no, you can't bring a raya from over here. Why? So he says, Umikan ein raya le'isr. You cannot bring a raya from this halacha to say that it's usher for this fellow to start his Shemoneh Esrei. Why? Very interesting. De'efsher dezel lav tfilat b'tzibur gemura mikri. Maybe there's a svara to say that our halacha over here is talking about somebody who came late. And because he came late, he's not starting his Shemoneh Esrei together with everybody else. Says the Chavetz Chaim, it could be that that's not called tefillah b'tzibur gemura. That's not real tefillah b'tzibur. Real bona fide tefillah b'tzibur is when you start together with the tzibur. So maybe there's a difference. Maybe this halacha over here in Siman Kuf Tes is talking about somebody who came late. He's not davening a real tefillah b'tzibur gemura. Therefore, he can't start if he's going to miss Kedushah. But somebody who's starting on time together with the rest of the tzibur, he's davening a tefillah b'tzibur gemura. So maybe he's allowed to start and miss Kedushah. What's the lumdus? Why should it be that this person is allowed to miss Kedushah and that person isn't? Explains the Chavetz Chaim. First he says, De'efsher dezel lav tefillah tzibur gemura mikri. Maybe our halacha here, the person who came late, he's not getting real bona fide tefillah b'tzibur. Ma'achar shali hiskali mahin b'shaveh, since he doesn't start together with the rest of the tzibur. U'kamosh kasav ha'pri begadim, the pri begadim forwards such an idea. Aval maskil b'shaveh, but somebody who starts together with the rest of the tzibur, efsher, and here's where he explains the svara. Efsher, it's possible to say, kevan da'ato chalalav achiyav lehispal b'tzibur. Right? This person's davening Shachris, let's say. Shir Chadasha, Hashem Yimlech Le'Laved, Tzur Yisrael, Baruch Atah Hashem Gal Yisrael, he's Masmich Geula L'Tfila, he's M'chuyev to start Shemoneh Esrei now. And he's starting Shemoneh Esrei, and he's davening Tefillah B'tzibur. He's starting together with everybody else. V'chiyav Aniyas HaKedushah Le'Eis Ata Ein Olav. Right now, he doesn't have a chiyav to say Kedushah. The tzibur is not up to Kedushah. The chiyav that he has right now is to start Shemoneh Esrei together with the tzibur and to daven Shemoneh Esrei. So he's going to do that. I should worry now about Kedushah? I'm not worrying now about Kedushah. I have no chiyuv of Kedushah right now. He's not mechuyev to worry now about the Kedushah that's coming up. And when the chiyuv of Kedushah does hit, he's an oinus. He's a Shemoneh Esrei. He can't answer. So the Bir Halacha says over here, he's mesupik. Again, what's his suffix? His suffix is, we have a halacha here that if you come late and you're starting the Shemoneh Esrei later than everybody else, you're not allowed to start if you're going to miss Kedushah. Could be the way we should understand that is, everything that you are doing is a b'di'evet. Your tefillah b'tzibbur is not a real tefillah b'tzibbur, or at least it's not a tefillah b'tzibbur gemura. Why? Because you didn't start together with the tzibbur. You're a tzigga commoner. You came late. So that's like a b'di'evet. So you should start now and put yourself in a position where you're going to miss Kedushah for a tefillah b'tzibbur that's not a tefillah b'tzibbur gemura? That, maybe no. But somebody who's davening a real bona fide tefillah b'tzibbur, he didn't come late, he didn't do anything b'di'evet, he's davening a real bona fide tefillah b'tzibbur, he's starting together with the rest of the tzibbur. You're going to say that that person has a chiyuv to worry now about the chiyuv to answer to Kedushah, which isn't even upon him yet? And because of that chiyuv that's not upon him yet, he should sacrifice tefillah b'tzibbur? And he should sacrifice tefillah b'tzibbur on a daily basis? Because he has this problem every day. Says the Chavetz Chaim, maybe not. The Aruch HaShulchan says 100% this person is allowed to daven shacharis in his normal way, even though he's going to miss Kedushah. The Aruch HaShulchan says this is Ma'aseh B'chol Yom. We see big people, we see Anoshim Gedolim, who are they pay close attention to their davening. They have chashivas hatfilah, right? They're machshiv their Shemoneh Esrei. They daven slow with kavana, and they miss Kedushah on a daily basis. He says this is Ma'aseh B'chol Yom. We should tell a conscientious person, somebody who's conscientious about his tefillah, that he should lose tefillah b'tzibbur every day because he's conscientious about his tefillah? Says Aruch HaShulchan, no. The only time we have this halacha is if you come late. If you come late, then we have this halacha, because everything that you're doing is a b'di'evet. Then we have this halacha. Now, according to the shita of Rav Moshe that we spoke about, again, you have no problem. I'm starting Shemoneh Esrei with the tzibbur. I'm getting tefillah b'tzibbur. If I'm getting tefillah b'tzibbur, I don't have to worry about Kedushah. And again, the Bir Halacha's svara of why you shouldn't have to worry about Kedushah is a very easy to understand svara. If right now, I don't have a chiyuv of Kedushah. The chiyuv of Kedushah is coming 8-9 minutes from now, when the chazan is in the middle of Chazaras Hashatz and he hits Kedushah. But right now, I don't have a chiyuv of Kedushah. Right now, I have a chiyuv of Shemoneh Esrei. So right now, I'm being mekayim my chiyuv of Shemoneh Esrei, and I'm doing it in a conscientious manner. I'm not going to worry about Kedushah right now. That's not. And when Kedushah comes, I'm an oinus. I'm in the middle of Shemoneh Esrei. There's nothing I can do. Okay. Now that we did some homework on yesterday's shir, now let's go weiter. So, we are up to Ois Cotton Hay in the Mishnah Berurah. Now, Ois Cotton Hay goes on the words of the Ramah, so I'm just going to read the Ramah inside, second line down in the Shulchan Aruch on Kuf Lamed Zayin and Beis. The Mechaber had told us that if you want to start the Shtil Shemoneh Esrei, you have to evaluate if you're going to be able to finish your Shtil Shemoneh Esrei before Kedushah. He mentioned Kedushah, and he also mentioned Kaddish. So he mentioned two things. And the Mishnah Berurah explained that he mentions Kedushah, he's talking about Mincha, right? You come into shul, you're going to start Shemoneh Esrei, you have to see to it that you're going to be finished before the Chazan hits Kedushah. Or by Shacharis, you're going to start the Shtil Shemoneh Esrei late, you have to see to it that you're going to finish before Kedushah. Then he mentions Kaddish. Explains the Mishnah Berurah that the Mechaber is referring to Ma'ariv. By Ma'ariv, there's no Chazaras Hashatz. So what comes right after the Shtil Shemoneh Esrei? Kaddish Shalom, Kaddish Tiskabel. So you have to see to it that you're going to be able to be finished your Shtil Shemoneh Esrei before the Chazan says Kaddish Shalom. so that you'll be able to answer Amen Yeshbei Rabba. And we brought down for the Gemara in Brachas, Daf Chav Amud Beis, that this makes perfect sense because Amen Yeshbei Rabba is even bigger than Kedushah. Says the Ramah, it's not only Kedushah and Kaddish you have to be concerned with. V'hu Amen Tohakel HaKadosh. You also have to be finished your Shemoneh Esrei so that you can answer Amen Tohakel HaKadosh. V'Shemei Tefillah. You also have to be able to answer Amen to Shemei Tefillah because Dinon Kaddish u Kedushah, because these two Amenim have the same din, the same chashivos as Kaddish and Kedushah. Okay. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cutting hay v'hu din Amen. Questions the Chavetz Chaim right away. L'chayra b'shleima Amen to Shemei Tefillah. The Ramah wants to add Amen to Shemei Tefillah into this mix. I understand what he's adding. Yesh nafkamina, that makes a difference. The tzarich lahamtin milhispalel, because that means that this gentleman who came late has to wait and not start davening Shemoneh Esrei, afilu achar Kedushah, right? He came in, he's late. He realized, I'm not going to be able to finish the Shtil Shemoneh Esrei in time to answer Kedushah. So what did he do? He waited, and he didn't start the Shtil Shemoneh Esrei, and he answered to Kedushah. Okay, now he wants to start davening right away. Says the Ramah, wait, you have to say Amen to Hakel HaKadosh. So says I'm sorry. He wants to start davening right away, right? Says the Ramah, wait, you have to worry about the Amen to Shemei Tefillah. So says the Mishnah Berurah, I could understand why the Ramah adds Shemei Tefillah to this mix. Yesh nafkamina diyatzarch lahamtin milhispal lafilu achar Kedushah, because it means that even after you answer to Kedushah, you cannot necessarily start davening the Shemoneh Esrei right away. Ad sheyeda sheyigmar kaidem berachas Shemei Tefillah, unless you know that you're going to be able to recite your entire Shtil Shemoneh Esrei from the time that the Chazan finishes Kedushah until he hits Shemei Tefillah, so you should be able to answer Amen to Shemei Tefillah. Aval Amen da Hakel HaKadosh l'may nafkamina. But what's the Ramah gaining by adding a Hakel HaKadosh to the mix? Kevin the tzarich ligmar lehispal kaidem Kedushah. If I know that I can't start saying my Shtil Shemoneh Esrei unless I'm going to be finished in time to say Kedushah, memeli ana Amen achar Hakel HaKadosh. If I couldn't start my Shtil Shemoneh Esrei because I saw that I'm not going to be finished before the Chazan hits Kedushah, so fine, so I didn't start. So I'll wait, and I'll answer to Kedushah, and I'll answer to Hakel HaKadosh. The nafkamina is, afilu im shama Kedushah. He's just telling you, even if you wait for the Chazan for Kedushah and you answer to Kedushah, mikamakim tzarich lahamtin mishon amein to Hakel HaKadosh shama adayin. Don't think you could start Shemoneh Esrei immediately after Yimlech Hashem La'olam L'Kach Tzil L'Davar Dar L'Luka. No, you have to wait until the Amen to Hakel HaKadosh. The Gam, and there's another nafkamina. Le'inyan Shalayam. Oh no, I'm sorry. No, go back. V'yesh Shlomo. The first, that's what I just said is the second nafkamina. The first nafkamina is V'yesh Shlomo. The nafkamina is afilu im shama Kedushah. Even if you already heard Kedushah earlier in the day, you heard Kedushah and you answered Kedushah to a previous minyan. So now for Kedushah, the halacha is I don't have to wait. Normally I can't start the Shtil Shemoneh Esrei unless I'm going to be able to answer to Kedushah. But I answered to Kedushah already this morning. I was here in Shul learning Daf Yomi an hour ago and I answered to Kedushah. So now I'm not worried about Kedushah. To become Makayim Tzarich Lahamtin Bisham Amen to Hakel HaKadosh Shaloi Shama Adayim. You still have the problem of Hakel HaKadosh if you didn't answer Amen to Hakel HaKadosh. The Gamla Inyan, and there's another nafkamina, and that is Shaloi Yamad Lihispal Tekef Achar Kedushah. Don't think you could start Shemoneh Esrei right after Yimlech. No, you can't. Kiyam Achar Shayan HaAmen Ala Bracha. You have to wait until the Amen to Hakel HaKadosh, the Gam Zehu Shayach LeKedusha, because that Amen is considered part of Kedushah. V'hu and the same halacha applies. Im yoidei tzibbur yomru baruchu v'hu lo shama adayin. Now the Chavetz Chaim is adding yet another thing into the mix. Baruch Hu. We learned earlier the whole complicated halacha of person al Shema. So there are places where the minhag is to say Baruch Hu after Shemoneh Esrei. Indeed, to say Baruch Hu maybe even after Ashrei V'Olotzion, before Aleinu. So what happens if this fellow knows that the tzibbur is going to say Baruch Hu, v'hu lo shama adayin, and he has not answered Baruch Hu yet today? Im yuchal ligmar tfilasei terem sheyomer akol Baruch Hu, if he could finish his shtil Shemoneh Esrei before the tzibbur says Baruch Hu mispal kedarkoi, then he could daven. V'im yedeh shelo yuchal ligmar tfilasei koydem Baruch Hu, but if he sees that he's not going to be able to finish his shtil Shemoneh Esrei before the tzibur says Baruch Hu, tzarich lahamtid b'shir chadasha ad sheyishma Baruch Hu. He's going to have to wait by shir chadasha until Baruch Hu. You see how, according to the Mishnah Berurah, this becomes so complex, and it's easy to understand why the Mishnah Berurah brought down the Rashba right away in the beginning of the Siman, who says, listen, if you want to leave, you could leave. If you don't want to stay in shul, you want to go out to the lobby and daven in the lobby, you're allowed to. The truth is, if you have to follow all of these calculations that the Mishnah Berurah brings down, go into another room where they're not davening and daven in peace. And don't have to go nuts with all of these shilas. Go to Torah of Moshe, again, as long as you're getting tefillah b'tzibur, you don't have any of these shilas. Continues the Mishnah Berurah. V'em kvar shama Kedushah ay Baruch Hu. If you already heard Kedushah or Baruch Hu today, ay yodeh sheyishma achar kach, or you know that you're going to hear Baruch Hu or Kedushah, let's say, by a next minyan, ein tzarich lahamtin, then you don't have to wait. Miyu l'moidim, afilu shama kama pa'amim moidim b'tzibur tzarich lahamtin. But when it comes to moidim, even if you bowed down for moidim in a previous minyan, maybe you even said moidim d'Rabbanan already, it doesn't matter. That doesn't excuse you from worrying about moidim in the tzibbur and the minyan where you are now. Because every time you hear moidim, you have to bow down. Why? Tahahatam, because what's the reason you have to bow down when the tzibbur says moidim? So that you shouldn't look chas v'chalila like a kaifer if you don't bow down when everybody else does. So it doesn't matter if you heard it earlier. It doesn't matter if you hear it now, you have to bow now. Also, for a Shemoneh Rabba, you always have to wait. Because there's no minimum. Every time you hear a Shemoneh Rabba, you have to respond. The Mishnah Berurah says it could be the Kaddish Yosems that come after Aleinu don't count because those are Bechlal optional. Ked Kasu among Avram Shachreinim, Va'ader Chaim V'Chayadu Kasu D'Chol HaKadeshim Im Shama Kvar Va'ana Amin Yeheshbei Rabba Ein Tzarech Sulhamtin. The Chayadim suggests that when it comes to all of the Kadeshim, if you heard Kaddish earlier and you answered Amin Yeheshbei Rabba, you do not have to wait for Kaddish. Okay. Now let's go weiter in the Mechaber, 2 lines from the bottom in the middle of the line. V'em lav. So the Mechaber said you have to evaluate if you're going to be able to finish your shtil Shemoneh Esrei in time to be up to the tzibur when the chazan reaches Kedushah. If you're going to make it, if you see that you could finish your shtil Shemoneh Esrei on time for Kedushah, then the Mechaber said yispal, then you could daven. Now continues the Mechaber v'im lav. But if you see that you're not going to be able to finish your shtil Shemoneh Esrei on time, al yispal. Then the Mechaber says, do not daven, because you can't miss Kedushah. Im ein hasha iveres. If you're not up against the clock, if you're not up against tefillah b'tzibur, Zman tefillah, or in the afternoon, if you're not up against shkia. Continues the Mechaber. V'im nichnas achar Kedushah. Okay, let's change the scenario a little bit. Let's say you came into the shul after the chazan already said Kedushah. After the tzibur is already past Kedushah. The chazan is holding by Hashiva Shefteinu Kvar Yishayna. Now, do you have a clean slate? Now, could you just go ahead and start Shemoneh Esrei? Says the Mechaber, no. V'im nichnas achar Kedushah. If you're clearing this shaila after Kedushah, so then you have another problem. Now you have to evaluate and see, do you have enough time to finish your Shtil Shemoneh Esrei before the Chazan reaches Moedim? If you do, Yispal, then you can daven. V'im lav, but if you don't have enough time, al Yispal, then you can't daven. Why? Because you have to bow together with the tzibbur, and even though technically, like we're going to see later, hopefully in today's shir, you could bow in middle of your Shtil Shemoneh Esrei, depending on where you're holding, lechatchila, we don't want you to start Shemoneh Esrei on the smach that you're going to bow in middle of your Shemoneh Esrei together with the tzibbur. We don't want you to do that lechatchila. We're afraid that you're going to be paying very close attention to your tefillah, which you should be, and you're going to forget to bow together with the tzibbur. And now you're going to look like a kaifer. So we don't want you to do this lechatchila. So says the Mechaber, even if you want to pick up your Shtil Shemoneh Esrei after Kedushah, it's still not so simple. You have to see how you're going to be able to finish before the Chazan hits Moedim. Says the Mishnah Berurah is Vav, Akar Kedusha. Now the words of the Mechaber is that you were nichnas Akar Kedusha. You came into shul after Kedusha. Says the Mishnah Berurah, says the Chavetz Chaim, that is lav dafka. Lav dafka. To who adinim nichnas kaidem Kedusha, same halach applies if you came into shul before Kedusha, vehimtin milahispal av Akar Kedusha. You came in before Kedusha, but you didn't start your Shtil Shemoneh Esrei before Kedushah because you realized that you didn't have enough time to finish your Shtil Shemoneh Esrei before the tzibbur hit Kedushah. So you waited until after Kedushah. Now you want to start your Shtil Shemoneh Esrei after Kedushah. Says the Mechaber, not so simple. You have to see how you're going to be finished before Moedim. Tzarich gamken l'shar ba'atzmayim yuchal ligmar she'yesh li'tzibbur l'moedim. Eis katan zayin shli'tzibbur l'moedim. Ula Ramah hanal b'hagah. And remember, says the Chavetz Chaim, according to the Ramah, it's not only Moedim you have to be concerned with. Tzarich ligmar kaidam amein shel Shemoneh Tefillah. You don't have time all the way up to Moedim. You only have time till Shemoneh Tefillah because you have to answer amein to Shemoneh Tefillah. Oy sheyishayir ba'atzmai sheyukal hagia b'tfilasai bebricha Shemoneh Tefillah imashlich tzibbur b'shaveh. Or the Chavetz Chaim says, maybe you don't have enough time to finish the Shtil Shemoneh Esrei by the time the Chazan reaches Shemoneh Tefillah, but maybe you have enough time that you'll get up to Shemoneh Tefillah so that you could say Baruch Atah Hashem Shemoneh Tefillah together with the Chazan. If you say Baruch Atah Hashem Shemoneh Tefillah together with the Chazan, then you don't have to say Amen, right? If you finish the bracha together with the Chazan, there's no need to say Amen, and it's the equivalent of Amen. So what's the Mishnah Berurah saying? The Mishnah Berurah saying is, the Mechaber says, if you start your Shtil Shemoneh Esrei after Kedushah, you have to see to it that you have enough time to finish before the Chazan hits Moedim. Says the Mishnah Berurah, we got to worry about the Ramah. So you got to finish your Shtil Shemoneh Esrei. Either you have to finish your Shtil Shemoneh Esrei before the Chazan hits Shemoneh Tefillah, or at least you have to reach Shemoneh Tefillah at the same time as the Chazan, so you could say Baruch Atah Hashem Shemoneh Tefillah together with the Chazan. V'im lav lo yaskel ad Moedim. And if not, you can't start until after Moedim. V'chein ha'etiku akreinim l'dina. Okay, weiter. Weiter. Says the Mechaber, top line, Kuf Lamed Ches Saman Aleph. So the Mechaber just said the halacha that if you start your Shtil Shemoneh Esrei after Kedushah, you have to see to it that you should be able to finish before the tzibbur hits Moedim. Now the Mechaber gives you another eitzah. Maybe you can't finish before Moedim, but v'hu adin im yachal lahagia lemoedim. Maybe you can't finish your Shtil Shemoneh Esrei before the Chazan hits Moedim, but maybe you could reach Moedim together with the Shliach Tzibur. V'hu adin im yachal lahagia lemoedim. If you could reach Moedim at the same time that the Shliach Tzibur hits Moedim, so then that's okay, because then you'll bow together. you have to bow for Moedim anyway. And over here, we're not worried that you're going to forget, because you're not going to forget to bow for your own Moedim, so you're going to bow for Moedim. So therefore, says the Mechaber, V'hu adinim yachal lahagia lamoedim. If you can reach Moedim together with the shots, that's okay. Or another eitzah. Maybe you can't reach Moedim together with the Shliach Tzibur. La'achas me'abrachos sheshoichim b'hem. Maybe you could reach one of the brachas that you bow down by. So, for example, maybe you come in and you want to start davening the Shemoneh Esrei, and you hear that the Chazan is in the middle of Shemoneh Tefillah. Well, if he's in the middle of Shemoneh Tefillah, you have to wait for him to finish Shemoneh Tefillah so you can say Amen to Shemoneh Tefillah. All right. So, Baruch Atah Hashem Shemoneh Tefillah, you say Amen. Now you want to start the Shemoneh Esrei right away, and you figure like this. The Shliach Tzibur just finished Shemoneh Tefillah. So now he's going to say Ritzei, the Sechazena, and then he's going to be up to Moedim. Maybe you have enough time, you'll start your Shemoneh Esrei, and maybe you'll get up to Magen Avraham at the same time that the Shliach Tzibur gets up to Moedim. Now you have to bow down by Magen Avraham. Baruch Atah Hashem, Magen Avraham. He has to bow down by Moedim. So if you say Magen Avraham at the same time that he says Moedim, you'll be okay, because you're bowing down, and it won't be near Kaifer. So that's why the Mechaber says, maybe maybe you could be up to one of the brachas of Shemoneh Esrei that you have to bow down for when the Shliach Tzibur gets up to Moedim. So then you're covered. Then you spal, you can daven. Says the Mishnah Berurah Kalches, sheshoichem behem, one of the brachas that you bow down for. Even though you're certainly not going to be able to recite Moedim D'Rabbanan together with the tzibbur because you're in the middle of Shemoneh Esrei, and b'kach klum. That we're not worried about. Since you're bowing together with the tzibbur, we got what we needed. You're not near a kaifer. And this is mutar lechatchila. The idea that you'll start your Shemoneh Esrei based on the idea that you'll be able to bow down together with the tzibur because you'll be up to one of the brachas that you have to bow down for, that's an eitzah that's good even lechatchila. But you should also try to make sure that you should be able to say the bracha of Shemoneh Tefillah together with the chazan, if you can. Next case, says the Mechaber. Second line down, Kof Lamed Ches Amud Aleph. Let's say you wound up in a problem because, again, you're davening Shacharis and you're running behind the tzibur. And you have all of these calculations in mind of whether or not you should start the Shemoneh Esrei or not. How fast am I going to go? How slow is the chazan going? But you made one mistake. You said Sir Yisrael and you ended off Baruch Atah Hashem Gal Yisrael. Now all bets are off. Now you have no choice. You have to start Shemoneh Esrei. Why? Because you have a chiyuv to be masmich geula l'tefillah. So now you have no choice. You got to start. So says the Mechaber, if you find yourself in a position where you're forced to start Shemoneh Esrei because you have a chiyuv to be masmich geula l'tefillah, so now you had no choice. You have to start Shemoneh Esrei. So you started Shemoneh Esrei. Now you're in the middle of the bracha of Rifa'inu, and the chazan gets up to Moedim. Says the Mechaber, Yishche Imoy. So bow down together with the tzibur, so you should look like a kaifer. Aval, that's only true if you're at the end, if you're in middle of a bracha, like in middle of the bracha of Rifa'inu. Aval imhu b'tchilasa oy b'soifa. But if you're up to the beginning of the bracha, Rifa'enu Hashem v'nerafei, or you're at the end of the bracha, Baruch Atah Hashem roifei chaylei Amo Yisrael, lo yishche, then you're not allowed to bow, even though it's going to come out near a kaifer, but you're not allowed to bow. She'ein sheichid b'tchilas bracha oy b'soifa, ela ba'avos u'b'haida'a, because the halacha is that we don't bow in the beginning or at the end of any of the brachas of Shemoneh Esrei, with the exception of the beginning of the bracha of Avos, the first bracha of Shemoneh Esrei, and the end of the bracha of Avos, right? The Baruch Atah Hashem Magen Avram, or the beginning of the bracha of Haidah, which is Moedim, and the end, Baruch Atah Hashem Atah Shimcha L'Chaneh L'Haidos. Says the Mishnah Berurah Cotton Tess, Kedei Lismaich, you got yourself in a bind because you have to start Shemoneh Esrei because you have a chiyuv to be masmech gula l'tefillah. Pirush, the Chofetz Chaim says, what is the explanation of the Mechaber here? Sheta, you goofed. V'amar ad Gal Yisrael. You had all of these cheshbonos in mind, but you didn't stop by Shira Kedushah. Instead, you said Baruch Atah Hashem Gal Yisrael. So now you have a chiyuv to start Shemoneh Esrei right away to be masmech gula l'tefillah. Shememela mechuyev lahasmech la tefillah miyad. V'hu adin, the same halacha applies in mitzad sha'asha iveres mechuyev la mitekef lizpal. You could also run into the same problem if you're up against Siman Tefillah. If you're up against Siman Tefillah, you might be forced by Siman Tefillah to start Shemoneh Esrei. The Elavachi, but if not for these considerations, if not for the consideration of being masmech gula l'tefillah, or the consideration of the concern of Siman Tefillah, you should have waited by Shira Kedushah for Kedushah. So if you were forced to start Shemoneh Esrei, so now if you're in the middle of one of the brachas of Shemoneh Esrei, where the chazan hits Moedim, so you'll bow together with the tzibbur by Moedim. Ve'enoi oimer az Moedim, but you will not say Moedim. Not only will you not say Moedim d'Rabbanan, you won't even say the words Moedim anachnu lach. You'll bow just so that you shouldn't look chas v'chalila like a kaifer. Now, the Mechaber said this eitzah, that you should bow together with the tzibbur in the middle of one of the brachas of your Shemoneh Esrei. That's only in a b'diavad situation. That's only in a situation where you were forced to start the Shemoneh Esrei by circumstances, either to be masmech gula l'tefillah, or because you were up against the clock, you were up against Siman Tefillah. But lechatchila umikam makayim imeina mukrich le'lahaskal miyad. If circumstances are not forcing you to start Shemoneh Esrei right away, lo'huta le'lahaskal atfila al das sheyishche be'emtza brachos. Until now, the Mechaber wasn't letting you do this, right? The Mechaber told us all along, one of the considerations for deciding whether or not you should start Shemoneh Esrei is, do you have enough time to finish before the chazan gets to Moedim? Why? Well, forget about Moedim. You'll start Shemoneh Esrei, and when the chazan says Moedim, you'll bow down in the middle of your Shemoneh Esrei. Says the Mishnah Berurah, no, we don't rely on that lechatchila. Why? Because after mutter lishchais be'emtza kol habrachos, because even though you are allowed to bow in the middle of the brachas of Shemoneh Esrei, ukid lakamam b'sibir kuf yud gimel siv aleph, mishum d'shem yishkach mi lishchais, we're afraid you might forget. Kevan she'enim mechuyev sham lishchais balavachi. If you're in the middle of Rifa'enu, we're afraid you're going to forget to bow down with the tzibbur, because that's not a place in Shemoneh Esrei that you usually bow down. And if we're going to tell you to concentrate on it and have in mind, with one ear you should be paying attention to where the chazan is holding, so that when he says Moedim you should bow, yitared v'lo yechavin b'tfilasai, you're going to end up being confused and you're not going to have kavana in your Shemoneh Esrei. Okay, I thought we would get a little bit further, but we're up against the clock, and also you can hear my voice is starting to go out. So, okay, we will continue in Hashem next time with Sif Beis. Thank you so much for joining me for Liman HaTorah, discussing Liman HaTorah. Should we make it against Klal Yisrael, the Baruch Shem should send Yeshua's first Parnasset Shituchim to all those in need. We should be zeicher to see the B'yas Kal Tzedek, B'meheri V'yameinu, Amen. Be well.